Live from the 607 is the ODPH Entertainment Edition, where we're talking movies, comics, TV, and more. Why don't you join in the conversation? Hashtag ODPH, because here we go. Welcome to another edition of the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour, hashtag ODPH podcast. I am your host, Ken M. Sitting across me this week is the one, the only, Padawan J.
Hello, hello, hello.
Folks, we have a lot to discuss in the land of entertainment, so hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. Join in the conversation, because, hey, we want to hear from you. And let's kick it off this week talking about movies at the box office, and no bigger movie out right now than DC Comics' Shazam.
Yeah.
Made a big impact at the box office. Pad, you got numbers?
Holy cow, yeah, it did. So for opening weekend, it made in the U.S. $53.45 million, far exceeding expectations. Can't find anything firm for, foreign market over the weekend. But I do have, courtesy of boxofficemojo.com, the current foreign number total, which is $102.3 million. Domestically, it is currently sitting at $56.775 million, bringing its worldwide gross to just over $159 million worldwide. I gotta say, it's doing very well at the box office.
Absolutely. Now, we are going to be talking spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet and you want to wait, we are giving you fair warning, because we're going to start talking in 3, 2, 1. Now, Shazam is an old-time DC Comics superhero. He's got a very lengthy history. Didn't start at DC, but he's eventually wound up there, created by Bill Parker and C.C. Beck.
Which I like the little C.C. Beck nod in the movie.
Yes, they did. It was very cool. There was a lot of little Easter eggs they did in touching upon his past. And obviously, it's the story of a young orphan who meets an aging wizard who decides to pass on the powers of gods to him.
So Hercules, I know Hercules was mentioned, Athena was mentioned. Like, basically, if you know even the littlest amount of mythology, you recognize the names.
Right, the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the courage of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury.
See, the thing that only worries me, and I know a little bit of mythology, having the Achilles bit, that might not be the best idea given his outcome, but
Right, but for the purpose that it needed to be, a young boy is now given the powers of gods, and he's now become a real life superhero, so to speak, that he has no idea what he's jumping into.
Right, yeah, and you see this in the movie when, he gets the powers and gets every child's dream. No matter who you are, at some point you wish you were a superhero, whoever it is. Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, Captain America, whoever. He's living this dream, and he gets these powers, and he knows there are superheroes. He knows Batman and Superman and Aquaman and Wonder Woman are a thing. But, he knows they're a thing, but he's not really that into them. And so he gets these powers, and he goes to his stepbrother, his foster brother, and goes, you got to help me out. I have no idea what I'm doing, and you know everything about this.
Right, because as he jumps in, you're seeing the story of Billy Batson, and he's trying to track down his birth mother, who he was abandoned from way back when.
In Minnesota, yeah.
Yeah, so now he's obviously set in Philadelphia as the story takes place. And it's just really interesting how they delved into the backstory, because I don't think in the comics they really touched upon it to this level.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, obviously the 1940s is a different time period.
Sure.
And, obviously when he made the move over to DC due to, that whole messy situation, which I'm not going to get into, it's always tricky with his origin and how he came to be and how his powers have come to, grow into a first family, so to speak.
I'll say the interesting thing for me with, his powers and getting chosen to be the champion, I think is what he ended up being referred to, was, early in the movie, the wizard is like, find me one who is the purest of heart, the purest of this, the purest of this. And the first thing we see Billy Batson doing in the movie is tricking these police officers to go into a pawn shop, locking them in there, and then jumping into their car and searching their database with the license plate number. And I'm like, really? This is going to be your kid who's the champion?
Well, as the wizard is casting his spell, because he knows that he is dying and he needs to pass on his powers, because what he needs to find is a protector to stop the 7 deadly sins. As we see, there's the statues that are in the temple that's holding the Rock of Eternity, which is a very powerful source of magic in the DCU. We'll just say it's the DCU for this purpose. And as the spell goes on, it finds Billy Batson. Now, and you bring up a very valid point, Pat. At this point, he's obviously causing some trouble, but his intentions are pure.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to find his birth mom.
Yeah.
And as it goes, you hear he's bounced from foster home to foster home, and then he winds up in the one that it starts at the beginning of the movie with a very eclectic group that's of foster kids, and he meets Freddie Freeman, who is such a diehard want to be superhero, just fanatic.
I'll say he's got a Batarang, replica, I think it is. I don't think it's an actual one, it's a replica.
The Batarang was a replica, but the bullet that he claimed to have found on eBay and had a signed certificate was tying back into Batman vs Superman.
Yep.
Which I thought was a very cool, subtle nod to Justice League and that universe without really going full deep in and involving them.
Right, not going, hey, remember Batman, Superman?
Yeah, exactly. They didn't go Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on this one. So as the movie is progressing, you see the wizard casting a spell. Billy is kind of reluctantly defending Freddy from bullies at school, and then just kind of it turns into a wild chase. And at this point, Billy is escaping the bullies, and he's on a subway train. And then all of a sudden the train shuts down and he's transported to the temple that's holding the Rock of Eternity. And at this point he is like, I have no idea what in the world is going on.
He almost thinks it's like some sort of hallucination or a joke. He's like, wait, is this real?
Right. And at this point, this is where he's bestowed the powers of Shazam. And he is transported back to the real world, and he's in full Shazam costume.
I'll say the whole sequence where he got the powers to me was a fun bit of comedy, and that's the thing I like with this movie. There were moments of comedy, but it didn't beat you over the head with it. It was like enough that like you would expect out of like a 13, 14-year-old teenager. Just place your hand on this staff and say my name, and you'll be given my powers. And there's a pause, and he goes, "Say my name," and Billy Batson goes, "Dude, I don't know your name. We just met like 5 minutes ago." Right.
The subtle humor in this, definitely was not rushed by any purpose.
No.
It felt very organic when you were hearing it. And as the movie is progressing too, you see that he is not the only person that has a connection to the Wizard of Shazam.
Yeah.
Mark Strong's character of Dr. Savanya, you see his backstory somewhere located in upstate New York.
Right.
Where he is at one point thought to become a chosen one in his own right, until he gets seduced by the influence of the 7 deadly sins and ruins his chance at this.
See, this was the awesome thing I liked about the opening of the movie was I thought for a second that, because I admittedly don't know all that much about the history of the character and villains and that. I thought that was Billy at first. Like at the start of the movie, it's going, I'm like, this must be Billy. And it starts, and then you find out, this isn't Billy. Slight side note, I did love the Smallville connection with John Glover making an appearance in the movie. Of course, John Glover played Lionel Luthor back in Smallville. So I always enjoy seeing him on anything DC related.
Yeah, it was a nice subtle nod, and obviously with the character and involving Dr. Savanya, who you can kind of sense like an overtone to Lex Luthor to a degree.
Yeah.
And obviously he missed his chance of having absolute power, and it's haunting him to the point
he's got a father he's not real happy with.
Yes, and obviously he causes a tragedy that happens, and he is just so obsessed with becoming somebody because he feels that he's been a nobody his entire life.
Yeah.
That's become like a borderline obsession to get back the power that he feels is rightfully his. And as he sees Shazam start making his appearance, because at this point Shazam has now become a public character.
Yep.
That people are seeing that he has powers, and where they go from here, it's very interesting. And where Savanya goes back to the temple looking for his opportunity, he fully takes the seduction of the deadly sins and absorbs them.
Yep.
Which is a very risky move, but it understands how much he really wants to feel that this will complete him.
Yeah.
And which I thought was kind of very interesting in the perspective they did.
Yeah.
Because he had his chance way back when, he missed it, and they just played right on it to get freed from the temple where Shazam was defending him.
No, yeah. You saw how much they tempted him in the beginning of the movie where, like, he was ready to reach in there and grab it. Like, he was, listening to the dark side of the magic, and then he goes, all right, I'm going to get back. And to him, that's the power he wants. Forget whatever the wizard's got. I want this. These guys are promising me everything I ever wanted. And that's a lot of good stuff that, in my head, I'm like, yeah, this is a good idea. Let's go for this.
Right. And obviously when they have their first meeting, because at this point, Shazam is still trying to figure out his own powers. This is almost like a tie-in to, you could look back to any superhero movie. I think Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Or Spider-Man, the original one, where he's kind of just jumping around and see what he can do with his powers.
He's standing there on the rooftop. Go, Webb, go.
Right. And as you see, as they're beginning their journey, Billy and Freddy are really trying to figure out, okay, what can Shazam do? What can't he do? And obviously there's a couple circumstances that really test the abilities of Shazam. Because at this point, Billy has no idea what he has. He just figures, okay, I am super huge and I have invulnerability. Obviously he finds out one way or another. And it starts going to his head because I think at this point, the way I interpreted, is he now finally has the feeling that he's a somebody after he's been so lost and alone his entire life.
Yeah.
That now he's a character that he feels, okay, this will project me further, that I might be able to find my birth mom.
I would say people finally care who he is, because his entire life, from the time his mother abandoned him and he's been going from foster home to foster home, clearly nobody has cared enough about him to want to stay at those foster homes. And he's been floating in and out of people's life with, because at one point after they catch him and he goes back to the child services or whatever office it is, and she goes, oh, all these homes you've been through, none of them wanted you back. So all these people have not wanted him in their life. And so finally he's got these powers, and finally people are paying attention to him, and finally people care about him.
Right. And to see how it trips his ego out is very interesting, because Freddie Freeman there is the only character that is really saying, hey, use those powers for good. You know what I would do if I had those powers? And he is the one that really wants to be the superhero, and he's the one that buys into the whole, with great powers comes great responsibility.
I'll say there's the entire scene where he's showing off his lightning powers in front of the crowd, and he pops the tire on the bus, and he saves the bus, and he catches it, and he's elated, and understandably so. Oh, I just caught the bus. And Freddy's like, yeah, congratulations, you caught the bus, but you also caused it.
And right after this happens, Dr. Savanya makes his dramatic appearance, and this is where Shazam is figuring, okay, I now have my supervillain. All right, what do I do? And he is fully not prepared for what happens.
Oh, my Lord, in the worst way possible.
Right, and he gets very shown up, very publicly.
Yeah.
So there is that moment where he doesn't know what these powers, if they're worth it, and he's kind of going through his own self-doubts. And at this point, the mission is to find his mom. And Dr. Savanya is on the mission to get the powers, and he's willing to do whatever it takes, albeit going right to the home of Billy Batson and the Foster family.
So talk about being in the right place at the right time.
Right. And you're now starting to see that where Billy is becoming of age of his superhero abilities, because he knows that his secret identity is now going to cause issues. And where they go from here is they go back into the temple, and they're trying to figure out, okay, what's going on, because they make the doorway inside the foster home, and that's where Dr. Savanya tries to get Billy to give him his powers, and he's ready to do it. He's ready. He's like, this isn't worth it after all, and I can't handle this. And then the family saves him. And I thought it was very interesting, because during this entire time, they're never referred to as like the family. Or what they refer to as in the comics as in the Marvel family, because Shazam is often referred to as Captain Marvel, but obviously there's some legality issues and such from
just a few.
The history. Like I said, you can Google it if you want. But I just thought it was very interesting that the young family around him is trying to go in there and save him, and Billy is not used to this, where somebody is actually caring about him.
Right.
So where he goes from here, they escape Dr. Savanya, and you do see some interesting doorways that they're trying to walk into.
Yeah.
This has ties into the older Shazam comics, where you see the Crocodile Men.
Yep.
And that ties into the Monsters Society of Evil. Now, that is very old school Shazam, and I know they're touching upon it a little bit in the current new comic book by Jeff Johns.
Right.
Bright Guy Signal was breaking it down, and he was saying, this ties in all together, and this really takes the element of magic, which you don't really see too much of in the DCU film universe.
Not yet.
As of yet. And just kind of really gives you a little taste of what's going to happen, because Shazam is basically based off magic as well, because his powers are given to him by a wizard. So where they're going from here is they escape, and Billy finally gets his moment where he meets his mom, and that moment is just the gut-wrenching punch in the stomach where it just falls apart on him.
I don't know what I was expecting the mother's explanation to be for why she had been missing for so many years. It wasn't that, and I absolutely hated her for it.
Right. And at this point, the family is being captured, and Shazam has to do what he has to do to save him at the amusement park.
Yep.
Because they're going to a public place. They're trying to run away from Dr. Savanya, but he's basically addressed him and said, if you want your family alive, you have to come and give me your powers.
I was saying at this point, they've kind of all figured out, although I think the family figured it out a little quicker than Billy did, the way to beat him, because as it stands, Billy stands toe-to-toe with Dr. Savanya, like he can't hurt him. But then there's the moment in the cave where, they throw a batarang at him, and it kind of comes around and it hits him in the back of the head, and it hurts him and he bleeds. And that's because the deadly sins are out of his body, and, he's more vulnerable. So they go, all right, we got to get these things out of him. Go.
Right. And it leads to obviously the climactic battle that happens, which It was very interesting to see how they introduced the Marvel family.
I was not expecting that. I know you mentioned it last week that like he's got a whole family and everything. I was not expecting that in this movie.
Right. I had an idea when they mentioned Freddie Freeman because he is Captain Marvel Jr. in the comics.
Sure.
And Mary Marvel is his sister, his long-lost sister Mary in the comics. So I knew that she was going to be in it.
Okay.
But to do the extended family as they did, I thought was a great nod to the history of the comics. And how they did it was very interesting because they didn't, like I said, they never mentioned Captain Marvel at all. And obviously they couldn't. But you really didn't have an idea. If you go in and you never read Shazam comics, you really didn't know what was going on. You just figured, okay, they're all Shazam now.
Right.
Which is not the case.
No.
Because Shazam is the strongest one of them all. But as they explain how the family gets their powers, it's the family, but he's the strongest member of the family.
I'll say it definitely felt like one of those things where like he's the strongest, and then they were all kind of more versed in some of the specific aspects of his power. The one was super fast, the one was super strong, the one could fly. It's kind of how I felt about it.
Right. It was just interesting how they played upon it. And obviously, when they matched up, it finally got back to Dr. Savannah versus Shazam. And this is where Shazam becomes a hero. This is that moment that he's finally realized. I mean, obviously, the fallout from the situation with his mom, and now he has a purpose to go and purpose to be good. And he really just exemplifies that with his powers, that he now has the chance to do something positive.
I also love the moment in the final battle where Dr. Savannah is giving the typical movie villain monologue. You know, you watch a movie with a major villain, you know, it doesn't have to be superhero. It can be an action movie. It could be anything. There's always going to be a monologue scene with the main villain. And Dr. Savannah is giving they're floating over Philadelphia, and he's giving his monologue about how he's going to destroy him and do this and do that. And they cut to Billy, and he can't hear a thing. He's like, wait, are you saying something to me? Are you monologuing right now? I can't hear you.
Well, it was one of the strongest points of the film that the humor in it, like we said, was very organic. And you need to realize that at this point, even though Zachary Levi is absolutely crushing it as the adult Shazam, he's still a child. And he's still doing that little annoyance taunts to somebody that's causing him trouble. I mean, we all know this. You go through kids, you know, there's obviously people that push your buttons. Billy is trying to do that. He's trying to throw him off his game. And you could just see the humor coming out in him. Yeah. And I thought they really captured that well. Because the one thing when I was talking about this movie last week, and I think I mentioned this on Parlay Points too, this movie was just so much like Big, the old Tom Hanks movie, meets Harry Potter.
I'll say they even had a little big nod in the movie.
Yeah, there was a nice little Easter egg in there. If you've ever seen the movie Big, it plays upon that. And it just captured the essence of the character, because Shazam, like we've said before, is not dark and brooding like Batman.
No.
He's more along the lines of Superman, but he's his own character in his own right. And like we said, he's had history throughout the DCU. You can go through his history of comics. He's been around since the 40s. And when he's gotten into the DCU, after, you know, obviously there's situations that happened previously, he finally has emerged himself as a major player, but he still represents that wholesome innocence of a superhero because he's still a child at heart. And obviously where he goes from there is just really interesting to see just how he has a coming-of-age moment. Because obviously defeating Dr. Savannah and saving the day and how he does it really was interesting to see that he's now accepted his role, he's accepted his new family, and obviously they now have powers.
Yep.
So where that goes from here was very interesting until they did the closing. And that one was the biggest eye raiser of them all.
Oh, I loved it.
You want to break it down for us?
So you get to the end of the movie, and there's one point in the movie where at this point the city knows Shazam is a thing. They don't know the guy's name, but they just know there's a costume superhero in the city saving people, and because the entire time videos are getting taken of him by Freddy and getting uploaded to YouTube, and they're getting thousands and thousands of views. And there's one point where Freddy gets in trouble with the bullies, and he says, well, I know the red tornado, or whatever they call him. Oh, yeah, well, if you know him, bring him to lunch with you. Okay, I will. And then, you know, he doesn't show up, and you get to the end of the movie, and he's sitting there by himself, and his family shows up, minus Billy. And then so then the bullies walk, and they go, oh, hey, where's your cape, buddy? And in walks Shazam. And he says, oh, hey, I'm here to eat lunch with my best pal in the world, Freddy, and all these other people that I definitely just met for the first time right now. And they're talking, and everyone's oohing and eyeing. And then he goes, oh, and I brought a friend. And then you see Superman walk in, holding a tray himself, and it's the suit minus the head because Henry Cavill couldn't do it because of scheduling conflict or something. I'm not 100% sure the reason.
I think it was schedule conflict.
Schedule conflict. So you see the suit, you see the you know he's walking in there, and you hear the old theme from John Williams and the original, Christopher Reeve movie back on the big screen again, which I absolutely loved.
Yeah, it was just such a cool nod, and obviously bringing it back to what the essence of Shazam was. Because in overall, Shazam was the fun film that DC needed to make.
Yeah.
Because if they tried making it too dark and brooding like Batman vs. Superman and the Justice League, it would never have gone over.
No.
Not in a million years. Shazam, at his core, is a lighthearted tale of a boy that is granted powers.
He's granted the powers and is able to, go through buildings like cardboard, and he has no idea what to do.
Exactly. And he has now become one of the most powerful beings in the universe. He's not going to have that, psychological disturbed arch rivals like Batman.
Right.
He's not going to have, the really oddball, disturbed rogues gallery that other, villain or superheroes have. His rogues gallery is very lighthearted, as we saw with the bonus scene.
Yeah.
Because they set up that Mr. Mind, actually, the little worm that's on there that has a voice box, is talking. He now plays a factor into the characters moving forward, and it's just he's a evil genius. It's a worm from a different plane, and obviously when he meets up with Dr. Savannah, where they go from there is good setup for the sequel. They did do a nod. I mean, obviously with Shazam, Black Adam is involved.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Did they? I thought they teased him early in the movie when the Wizard was finally giving backstory to the whole situation with the Wizard and his brothers to Billy Batson. Did they reference Black Adam there?
100% they did.
That's what I thought.
And Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who has been long tagged to the character for years now, did make a social media post and did confirm that Black Adam is going to go into production.
Oh, good.
And he has some ties. I don't know if it's his production studio, has ties to Shazam.
Okay.
So he was celebrating everybody, celebrating what a nice job Zach Livy and company did. And obviously this now sets up for a future movie, I would assume.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to see it for the sequel per se, but I wouldn't doubt if they go 3 movies with Shazam.
No, yeah, because I was kind of wondering, because, they're going through and they're talking, and the Wizard's telling about another they gave his powers to, and he wasn't pure, and he turned away from them and released the 7 deadly sins onto the world. And I'm sitting there going, did they just subtly introduce Black Adam there?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
1,000%. And it just brings back to the core essence of the hero, because, every superhero has a major supervillain, and they need to be balanced out. Because what happens when you're the impossible force that nobody can defeat? Well, what if somebody else has that, but their morals are a little more compromised than yours? That's where the true essence of the character lies. And if you look at his rogues gallery throughout the years, like I said, Shazam has a very colorful one.
Oh, yeah.
It's very interesting. And you've seen the Crocodile Men appear. You've seen Mr. Mind appear. And you've seen Black Adam appear and Dr. Savannah. It's a very unique, eclectic mix, but it goes back to the essence of the character, because the character, when you strip everything away, is just a young boy that is granted powers beyond his wildest dreams. How do you go about making characters involved like that connect with audiences? That's the true test, and they pulled off it masterfully. This one showed so much heart and so much fun. And it was really cool to see, because a lot of times we tend to gravitate more towards the anti-heroes. The Venoms, the Deadpools, the Wolverines.
The Punishers.
But to see a hero who is the complete 180 of that really connect with audiences, and especially we haven't seen that happen in a long time, I would say, is really fun to watch and see and be a part of.
And I want to say the thing I enjoyed probably the most out of the entire film wasn't anything on screen. The showing I went to was on this past Saturday, so it wasn't opening night because I had some scheduling conflicts. But I went to go see it. Now, we all know DC's kind of reputation for movies the last couple of years. Some of it justified, some of it's kind of based on your own opinion. But I was very, very, very happy to see that despite all that, and despite the rap DC films kind of get, that the theater and showing I went to was sold out. That there wasn't an empty seat in the house. Oh
yeah, the word of mouth about this has been nothing short of amazing, and rightfully so. The humor in this really sells the movie, and it's just a fun movie. And when was the last time we saw a real fun superhero movie?
Yeah.
Not an epic like Avengers, because the tone is different. But I'm saying just when you get right down to it, When was the last time we've seen just a fun superhero movie? Lighthearted.
Yeah.
Family essence right to the core. We haven't really seen that in a while.
Yeah.
That's why Shazam was such a breath of fresh air.
I'll say arguably the Christopher Reeve Superman movie. Because, it had Superman elements to it, but it wasn't dark, brooding, and it was kind of hokey, but it was a product of its time.
Right. It's one of those situations that is just such a cool thing to see in this day and age. Because you like I say, we see so much with the anti-heroes, that the real wholesome...
Let's say the heroes that I've got to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Right. Because, that's what everybody knocks Superman about, being the ultimate Boy Scout. Mm-hmm. Well, when did that turn out to be a bad thing?
Right.
Shazam is also in that same vein. A little different history, and obviously magic plays a big part of it, and it really connected, like I said, a lot of the themes that you kind of see with Harry Potter.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion.
Yeah.
It really connected, and it really just made for an overall just fun movie. I can't recommend it enough.
No, I can't either. It's amazing.
If you haven't seen it, make a point to go see it. Hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. What was your thoughts on the Shazam movie? We want to know. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is George Gatton, and you are listening to the Ocho Duro Harley Hour Entertainment Edition.
Coming back for segment number 2 on this edition of the ODPH podcast, and this Sunday is a big day if you are a TV fan.
Mm-hmm.
Dare I say pop culture fan?
I'd say pop culture fan, yes.
Because the hype that has been surrounding Avengers Endgame is arguably the biggest one going.
Yeah.
But
it's like Harry Potter levels from like when Harry Potter was in its climax of like, books 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Right. But right behind Avengers is the anticipation for the final season of Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we here at the panel have been getting with a bunch of questions. When are you going to be covering Game of Thrones? We want to know. So we have decided to answer those listener requests. Pad, break it down for us.
Well, of course, like we said, Game of Thrones does return this Sunday. Check your local listings for what time it airs in your area. But, of course, we're going to do a bit of a retrospective, I guess you could say, because while some people are doing rewatches, myself included, are doing rewatches, just because there's, 70-something, 80-some-odd episodes, there's a lot to try to remember going into this, climactic final season where everything's going to get tied up into a nice, neat little bow. Slight side note, I did particularly enjoy Kit Harington's Saturday Night Live appearance this past Saturday, where if you can find his monologue, it's worth checking out because a couple stars of Game of Thrones appear and ask him questions. I also loved the bit they did where quote-unquote HBO was teasing spinoffs they were going to do, which culminated in Ice-T and the woman from Law & Order SVU doing Law & Order Westeros. So that whole segment is just a riot. So if you can find either of those two segments on YouTube, on the SNL YouTube page, can't recommend it enough. It's hilarious. But let's get to our retrospective. Of course, Game of Thrones is the now going to be 8-season epic of Westeros and the Game of Thrones, where you have these houses vying for the kingdom and the Iron Throne and to rule everything. But in the midst of all this, as the show opens, there's a promise of an imminent threat, or where the world of men is going to be threatened, but winter is coming, because this is a land, they mention it a little bit in the show, but it's more heavily mentioned in the books that this isn't a land like you and I are used to, where you have your seasons that last a set, hopefully, length of time, and it kind of comes and goes. No, this is a land where you can have like a decade-long, 2-decade-long, 3-decade-long summer. Mm-hmm. And when summer ends and you get into fall and then winter, nothing good is happening. So there's this constant threat of winter is coming, winter is coming, winter is coming. And, so there's the threat of these undead zombie horde coming down from the north, the untamable lands where nothing can survive, nothing can live except for them, known as the White Walkers and the Night King. So they're doing their whole march now where, going back and rewatching earlier seasons, it's funny how much they play a prominent role later in the show, and obviously so. But how much early on it's kind of like a glimpse here, a glimpse there, until they finally hit a point and it's like, oh crap, they're coming.
Right. I mean, this is something based off George R.R. Martin's novels that he's written.
Song of Iron and Ice, A Song of Fire and Ice. Excuse me.
No problem. And this is based on the magical world of Westeros and the battle for the Iron Throne, and there's rival families, and it almost has that medieval feel to it.
It's very much borrowed from the War of the Roses,
right?
In real life history.
Right. So where this goes is they've obviously made some changes and really just created this fantastic world of just it almost feels like fantasy meets magic meets medieval times.
Right.
And it comes together so flawlessly too.
Yeah. I'll say, of course, you have your kingdoms where you have the Kingdom of the Vale, Kingdom of the North. You have, the Baratheons, the Targaryens, and and everything else. And so it's kind of this epic that it starts off as, it's a hunky-dory, happy-go-lucky type of thing, and then everything goes sideways in the worst way possible when King Robert Baratheon goes off on a hunting trip, which is, if you watch the show, you notice that there are a couple kings that kind of go off and go on hunting trips, so this is nothing new. He goes off on a hunting trip and gets gored by a boar. And it's a mortal wound, and he knows he's not going to survive it. They try doing things to try and save him, but he goes, listen, it ain't worth it. I'm not going to live. Ned Stark, you are in charge. You're in charge. You got to run things.
Yeah.
And at this point, you kind of get the feeling, because it's funny too when you watch early seasons of the show, knowing how twisted and evil Cersei gets later in the show, to the point where she blows up an entire building full of people.
Yeah.
In season 6, where you watch season 1, and if you didn't know it, she seems like the most innocent person in the world, other than the fact she has relations with her brother.
Right. There's a lot of very interesting overtones involving each of the head families of their said regions.
Yep.
To put it mildly. And that's a very interesting point of the story. I try not, focusing on that at all, because it's just weird.
Yeah. So, you have the Targaryens who used to rule Westeros, the Mad King, but he was killed off by Jaime Lannister. And so then Robert Baratheon took over, and now Robert Baratheon is dead. They kill off Ned Stark, and meanwhile the Lannisters take control, and Joffrey, quote unquote Robert's son, and son with Cersei take over, and he becomes the king at the age of I don't think I ever hear a firm age, but he looks like he's about 14, 15 maybe.
Right. He is somebody that's given power that he is definitely not responsible for.
Yeah, he's given him a lot of power way too soon that he is just mentally not ready for, and he's got the mind of a very twisted individual.
Right. Because the one thing about the show too is they're not afraid to kill off major characters at a drop of a dime.
No. They had Jason Momoa on their season 1, and they killed Jason Momoa season 1.
Right. And they obviously explain why each character is killed off, and it's very interesting, just the mental chess game that's going on, because it's like everybody's trying to be a step ahead of everybody else.
Right.
There really is no, dare I say, squeaky clean, innocent character on the show.
No, they've all done something that is morally, corrupt.
Right, which is a very interesting thing, because when you see shows, you typically have your heroes and you have your villains. It's not that cut and dry. There's so many shades of gray and multi-layers to every character.
Yeah.
That really, the ones that you think, okay, they're completely innocent, they can do no wrong, are the ones that just do something completely left field, that you're sitting there scratching your head and going, wait, what just happened?
Yeah. So, of course, you have across the sea, you have Daenerys Targaryen and her brother are across the sea. They want to get back to Westeros because, hey, we're the true kings, or we're the true heirs to the throne. We're the Mad King's kids. That's our throne. We got to get there. So that Daenerys goes on this whole journey of crossing the sea, crossing the land across the sea, building up an insane army of just everything she goes through. Just says, oh yeah, hey, we'll join up with you. And she, to the point where she finally crosses into Westeros, and there's an awesome episode in season 7. I want to say it's episode 4, where her forces face off against the Lannisters, which the Lannister forces are kind of by and large seen as they're the cream of the crop. They're the guys that all right, if we're going against these guys, we're in trouble. We're not going to do anything. And Daenerys' forces, now granted they had a dragon, but still, Daenerys' forces just run an absolute train through them and just destroy them utterly. To the point where, Jaime escapes and makes it back to King's Landing, and Cersei goes, oh, well, how many forces do we have left? And he's like, we're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, because one of the aspects of Game of Thrones, too, is when they do their battles, they do very epic battles.
Mm-hmm.
There's not just usually one character involved, there's armies involved, and just how detailed they get. Even involving the supernatural aspect of dragons.
Yeah.
As Pat was touching upon a little bit, is one character has a family or 3 dragons to her disposal.
Let's say 3 dragons to her disposal when the world, by and large, thought dragons were gone and would never be seen from again.
Right, and then on the flip side, you have a family that is one of the biggest armies in the world, and they have resources to their disposal that others don't. And then you have another family in the north that is plotting of how they protect their north and defend the wall. And then you have you have
the Starks in the kingdom to the north where they very much just kind of want to be left alone. Mm-hmm. They're very much all right. Hey, you guys figure out what you want to do and just kind of leave us out of it. But they inevitably get dragged into it when, because there's a right-hand man in the show for the king known as the hand of the king. Mm. He kind of carries out the king's will and does what the king asks him to. And, Robert Baratheon needs a new hand, and he picks Ned, and so that's how, the Starks in the north get dragged into this, to the point where, like we said, Ned gets killed off, his son Robb, who is next in line, takes over. He's supposed to marry one person, chooses not to, and then you have the infamous red wedding scene. And the north just gets destroyed, and not utterly, but they just get ransacked to the point where, like, you really get this sense of it when you watch the show's intro, where it starts off all happy and lucky, to the point where I want to say it's like season 4 or 5 where, there's the famous intro where anytime they go to Winterfell in the show, season like 4 or 5, it's like black cloud. You can't see anything. It doesn't look good. And then you get to the point where, Jon Snow kind of comes back and takes over things and starts leading the North's forces. And then, the smoke's gone and things are starting to look a little better.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how they play that off, because the intro to the show, if you've never seen it, is very interesting with their animation. Mm-hmm. And just you see how the cities rise up and what goes on with them. And then it also just gives you a quick once-over of where they're going to be talking in the story. Because the one thing is when they deal with, 7 realms of the world of Westeros, this is just, there's so many moving parts involved that at times it can be tough to catch up.
Yeah.
And it really throws you off, because I know, like, when Pat is explaining, is just there's so many families that are involved: the Lannisters, the Starks, the Targaryens, and so on and so on. That now we're to the point we're on season 8.
So we're going to be going into season 8, yeah.
That everybody has either merged together or has been wiped out.
Yeah, there's an entire family that was wiped out. You had the Tyrell family, who was this, not as prominent and huge as, say the Starks or the Lannisters, but they were still one of the more older families and had been around for a long time. There is the scene in season 6 where Cersei blows up the Sept, where she's supposed to be having a trial, and the rest of the Tyrell family is in there, and they kind of reference it at like an episode or a couple episodes later where they go, listen, you need to, the Tyrell family is gone. You need to do this because there's already been one family eliminated.
Yeah, there's just so many moving parts involved, and you see the evolution of the characters. Because if you take a look at season 1 and where Jaime Lannister started and Cersei started, and then you see how Ned Stark's family began. Yeah. Sansa and Arya, and Jon Snow, and obviously his sordid history too. Yeah. And how he is just kind of emerged as the hero of the show. And he seems to be the most noble, but yet not really. Yeah. There's certain elements involved with him that going into this next season are going to be very interesting to see how it plays out.
I will say, and if you get a chance, I do recommend doing a rewatch, at this point after the show is over. There's some fun things in early seasons that, like, when you know what happens, it's fun. There's I forget what episode it is, but it's in season 1. There's a moment where Robert Baratheon is having a conversation with Ned Stark, and they know that Daenerys is coming. Mm-hmm. Or she's going to try and come. They know that she's married Khal Drogo. She's joined with the Dothraki, this massive war, race people, whatever they are, that just pillage, loot, and plunder, and don't give a care or a thought about who it is they're doing it against. They know they've joined up, and one of them goes, "Oh, well, we might need to deal with them at some point." And I think it's Robert Baratheon goes, "Oh, don't worry. If they ever try to cross the sea, which they've never tried before, we'll just swat them back into the ocean." And it's this fun little line. They're like, "Oh yeah, we'll just swat them back into the ocean." No, they cross the sea, and then they absolutely run through your forces.
Yeah, it's just so interesting of just how little to detail they pay attention to and then come right back with it. The stuff that you see season 1 they haven't touched upon, they just bring back full force down the road.
Yep. So, of course, we go into season 8. Where are we? Well, if you remember the end of last season, season 7, the Night King, the army of the dead, has finally made their way to the wall. And the wall, the 700-foot, 30-plus foot thick ice wall is destroyed. The Night King has one of Daenerys' dragons that was killed and brought back to life, because that's one of the powers of the Night King is he can animate the dead. And that's why his force starts from, ye old force size to like half a continent size. So at this point he's at the wall. Jon, Daenerys, and some of the other forces are kind of gathering together because they know they're coming. They know they need to do something. It's just a matter of getting everyone together and stop fighting for 5 minutes to get them together and stop this. Now, I'm going to ask you, Ken, how do you think this is eventually going to play out or end? Because there's a lot of speculations as to who's going to die, how it's going to end, good, bad, and otherwise.
Well, the one thing that this show has taught me is anybody you root for that you think is good does not have a happy ending.
No.
Under any circumstance. You look at Ned Stark, who was the most noble character on the show, and he was killed off by Joffrey at his order, that is, because that's when Joffrey took over as king. And then you take a look at Robert Stark.
Yep. Hey, you're happily married and pregnant with child.
Yes, and then the Red Wedding happens, which is just one of the most visually intense scenes I think I've seen on TV, because they did not hold back any punches.
No.
And it is just as, disturbing as you would think when you hear about it.
Yeah.
And then as they go on further, you see about Ramsay Bolton getting involved and just what he does, on the torture level there. And then, when Cersei emerges and just decides to go on her own rampage, to now going into the final season, the epic battle that's going to happen, the Battle of Winterfell, which is going to happen the same weekend as Avengers Endgame coming out.
Oh, boy.
Which social media is going to explode about.
Yeah, that's going to be a weekend. Like, if you can't watch either of those, it's relatively soon after they come out, just delete the apps off your phone.
Right. And I think in that episode, that is when you're going to see a lot of the playing field get leveled off. I would not doubt Jon Snow not surviving that battle.
Okay.
I'll go on a limb and I'll say that.
Okay.
I would not doubt another character getting a major character like a Jaime Lannister getting killed off in that battle, because I think that they're going to finally be involved and where that goes from there. And I think it's ultimately going to come down to the Night King, who, my opinion, is Bran Stark.
Yeah.
The Three-Eyed Raven becomes the Night King. However you want to determine that, he winds up being the Night King. And I think his final victim, quote-unquote, because I think he wins the entire thing.
Okay.
I think he wipes out everybody. I think his Night Queen will be Cersei.
Ooh, okay.
And I think she is going to be the last one there, but she's going to be the last to be killed and then brought back by the Night King.
Okay.
In a very weird sense, but it's Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
The weird thing is it makes sense. I mean, obviously, you take a look at Jaime's relationship with Cersei. Enough said.
Yeah.
And then obviously what's going on with, Daenerys and Jon Snow.
Yeah, where, yeah,
it's messy. So I'm not doubting something weird like that is going to happen.
Yeah.
That's my prediction. I think the Winterfell battle is going to wipe out a lot of characters.
Yeah.
That you're not going to see a happy ending for this. I don't think it. And obviously, if it did, I don't think it would help. I think it would kind of put a little tarnish on the show.
Right.
In my opinion. I just think because of how well it's played out and just how the game is played, because it's the Game of Thrones, that there is just so much politics going on in that sense. That everybody's trying to get the one-upsmanship on everybody. That I think it's going to take a ruthless move to actually win. But then what do you win when you have no followers?
Right.
That's where it's going to come down to.
Yeah, and Cersei's very much getting to the point where nobody really wants to be around her or near her, because nothing good has been happening since she's kind of been in the reins of control.
No, after she got shamed, then she has just kind of really gone off the deep rail.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's been reasons for, and then when she took out House Tyrell by herself, that was the tipping point for where her character is going.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is going to be a lot of destruction and a lot of death. I think you are going to see a fair number of people die in the Battle of Winterfell. I think Jon will make it through. I think Daenerys will make it through. I think Brienne of Tarth is one that, her time is probably numbered, because as noble and is kind of, I'm going to do this for them kind of thing it can be. I think there's going to be a moment where one or a couple members of House Stark, who Brienne swore to their mother that she would protect them to her dying breath. I think she's going to fulfill that promise that, they might get cornered, they might get trapped, and she's going to go in there and fight to the bitter end and run, get out of here, save yourself type moment.
Right. I think that, right now she is probably the most noble character on the show. Mm-hmm. And that's a scary thing because she is trying to do the right thing and defend honor and just what you want out of, somebody following your family, who's the royalty of said country. This is what you want.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think this is going to come back to honor, too. I agree. I think she's going to get killed off. I think she's going to get killed off defending Sansa, who is going to do something stupid.
Yeah, no, I think I don't know who, but one of the, obviously not Jon, because like I said, Jon's going to make it through. One of the other Stark kids is not going to make it through, be it Arya or Sansa. One of them ain't going to make it through this. I don't know how, but I'm looking at a map, which I'll include the link in our show notes. The White Walkers can do some real damage here. Looking at this map, because of course they are at Castle Black, and they are at the Wall as we know it, as we sit here recording, because, well, the premiere hasn't come out and they haven't moved yet. We haven't seen it yet. They can travel down, and they're obviously gonna hit Winterfell. We know that's coming. They can continue to further swing down, and then they get into the Riverlands, and they can hit the Twins, which we saw earlier in the show. I want to say it was like season 2 or 3. I could be wrong. And then they can swing over. They can hit the Eyrie, which is in the Vale, which of course we saw Littlefinger and Sansa hanging out at for a couple episodes, and I want to say it was season 4 or 5. So they can kind of take out that. Then they can swing back over and hit Riverrun, which is back in the Riverlands, before making their way to Casterly Rock, which is of course the home of the Lannisters, before making a final swing back over and hitting King's Landing. They can do, like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like one is right next to the other and it's on the path there. They can do some real damage.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see their plan of attack, because I think, as we've discussed, the Battle of Winterfell is going to be the definitive episode this season. It's not going to be the second to last one like it's typically been in the seasons of Game of Thrones. And where the Night King and his army goes, it's going to be anybody's guess. I mean, there's been so many wild battle scenes on this.
Yeah.
I mean, Pat, do you have a favorite one?
Oh, probably the Battle of the Bastards, just because of, like, it had a Lord of the Rings feel to it, where it is a 1 versus 1,000, where the odds are so against Jon Snow and his forces that, listen, I know we don't, like, he even tells Sansa, he's like, listen, I know we don't have enough, but it's our childhood home, we have to do it. And then you get the Eyrie and the Vale forces running in at the last possible moment, with the save, and just kind of, there's that famous and epic shot where the bodies are just piling up around him and around him and around him, and like the camera points down and he's looking up to the camera and he's almost suffocating. That there's so much bodies and corpses and people around him that he comes out of the battle and he goes running after the enemy forces back to Winterfell, and you don't recognize him. He's just so covered in blood, mud, dirt, and soot.
It's going to be an interesting time come next Sunday. We definitely are excited here at the panel about it. Dare I say, this is going to be the biggest event on TV this year.
Yeah, of this year, easily.
Yeah, easily on TV. HBO is going to be the place to catch Game of Thrones when it returns. But hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. I really want to ask our listeners, because, like I said, we've been getting hit up for questions about talking Game of Thrones. Who do you think is going to be the ultimate winner of the Game of Thrones? I want to know. Pat wants to know. Hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. Are you excited for the season? We want to know. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is the King of Lisle, Luke Visengard, Gladius 205 champion, and you're listening to the ODPH.
Coming back for segment number 3 on this edition of the ODPH podcast, and we have to talk about one of our favorite shows, which triumphantly returned, Cloak and Dagger, back on Freeform.
Yes.
Wow, what an intro coming back.
Oh, yeah, very strong.
Yeah, we are talking spoilers on this one, because holy...
Sugar cookies?
Yeah. Episode 2 outshined Episode 1, in my opinion.
Episode 1 had a good cliffhanger ending.
Episode 1 had a good cliffhanger ending, because as we come back, we see everything has changed. We're 10 months out from the ending where the divine pairing of Cloak and Dagger saved New Orleans from everything that was going on there. We saw Detective O'Reilly was shot, presumed dead, but she emerged from the chemicals that were in the water.
Yep.
And now we don't know what's going on. The only thing we know is it is mayhem season. And where they go from here, it gets crazy, which like I said, we are talking spoilers. So be ready. 3, 2, 1. Pad, what did you think of episode 1?
Thought episode 1 was good. It was very interesting to see the kind of dynamic and the time jump. To me, that was probably the most interesting thing that I didn't see coming, that I figured they might pick up maybe about a day or a week or so afterwards, and things would kind of escalate. But no, they just jumped right into it. You saw Aubrey Joseph, who plays Cloak, just really embraced the hero role, because as they left off last season, he's framed for the murder. And he has to leave his family. He's hiding out in the abandoned church that Tandy, who's played by Olivia Holt, who is the rock star of the show, he's now set up. He's alone. He's isolated, but he's taken upon the responsibility of, I have these powers. I need to do good. So he's almost being very much a Batman type character, where he wants to do the right thing, but he also wants to do it without being seen at all.
Right, because that's the trick to this, is he's using his powers. He's finally learned. It's been 10 months, so you'd figure, okay, he's been experimenting a little bit. He's been trying to figure out where he's going.
It's been 10 months where he's by himself in a room out of a building where nobody other than Olivia Holt knows he's there.
Right. And as he's going through, you see that he's robbing drug dealers and gang members, and he's just trying to clean up his city.
Yep.
He's using his powers. With great powers come great responsibility, like the late Stan Lee always said. But you see on the flip side, Dagger is stepping away, it seems, from her superhero life. She's taken ballet back up again. She's attending counseling meetings with her mother over the issues with her abusive father. And this is where we meet a new character named Michaela. And she has a very interesting story going on with her, where she is a victim of domestic violence. And Tandy is brought back into the fold of, she wants to do good and takes matters into her own hands.
So it's almost that little light she can focus on, where I'm a little lost, I'm not quite sure what to do, and you're in the proverbial darkness, and there comes that little light, hey, focus on this.
Yeah, this is where she really, like I said, Olivia Holt last season just crushed the role.
Yeah.
And you now see her stepping right back in like she didn't miss a step. She comes right back in, and you see where Tandy, who is trying to balance out, I'm trying to step away, I'm trying to focus on regaining whatever sense of normalcy is in my life, to now I need to help this girl, and she just does it just straight raw emotion. It's not the most clear-cut, easiest thing to do, but she sends the message to Michaela's boyfriend about staying away and leave her alone, and we see where this goes as she meets up with Cloak, and they're catching up about what everybody's been up to. And Tandy actually has to wind up saving him, because there's a mission that he tries doing that goes tragically wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And he almost gets killed, but Tandy comes in to save the day. And at this point, she's going, why didn't you tell me you're up to this? And he's like, he really doesn't have like a good response. And it kind of causes a little fallout between the two, because at this point, they've just been doing their own things. And also in the background, too, Detective O'Reilly has returned. And really dealing with the fallout from last season, and where her character is going is just been really interesting, because Emma Lahana, who plays her, is having a very good challenge this season. And we're going to get into that just a little bit later in this segment. But as we see, she's coming back and dealing with the fallout of the corrupt police force she works on, and just what is going on there. And just where she is trying to work with Cloak about cleaning up the city, but doing it the right way. And you see Cloak hatches a plan with Dagger about infiltrating a meeting going on and taping evidence. And then before they can go in there, they see a body get smashed to a window.
Yeah, that was something.
And they walk in, they just see a pile of dead bodies that are killed, and they're like, we've been here the entire time. Like, wait, what happened? And nobody can explain. And it was just, for episode 1, it was just a nice little comeback.
Yeah.
Just, nothing really flashy, but setting the groundwork, because something's going on with this Michaela character. You know that Cloak is on a mission now, and it kind of has purpose, because he's basically, he has nothing left. Like, what does he have left to lose?
So he's very admirable motivation for it. I understand him wanting to clean up the city and get the villains and the criminals and the drugs out of the city. But like, there's a way to go about it even with his powers, and there's a way to not go about it, and like just running in there, taking the evidence, and going off to the police and going, "Oh, hey, here's your evidence. Go get him." Not quite the way to do it.
Right, but this is where I think Aubrey Joseph's going to really have a breakout season this year. Like, you can just get the feel, like, between him and Lahana. They're the two characters that I'm really interested to see how their story plays out. Because as we see with Dagger, I mean, she's teetering on, normalcy and then the domestic violence issue, which I think they're portraying very well on the show.
Yeah.
They're being very tasteful about it. Because as you see, Michaela goes back to the council group and she basically makes up a story of what happened and, with Dagger's attack. And just how they're handling that, I think they're doing it very tastefully.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's a very strong subject matter and they have to do it right if they're going to do it. And they have to be very tasteful with it. And I think Cloak and Dagger's writers are doing a very good job with that. But as we go on from episode 1 to episode 2, we start digging into more of the supernatural aspect that was tied into the show last season. That one of the characters who is getting killed off in that fateful meeting is making a symbol of, it was like a voodoo symbol of, like a guide to either get justice or, guide on to the next life. And Cloak is brought back into his meeting his girlfriend Vita's aunt, who is very ties to the supernatural and the voodoo knowledge, and is really explaining what's going on. And at this point, they're flashing back and forth with all the characters involved to that scene. You see O'Reilly come in, and she's evaluating what happened at the scenario, or at the scene. And she is just trying to piece together, okay, what happened? She sees Cloak and Dagger there, and is trying to explain, hey, you guys can't be here. You guys can't do this. Leave this for us. This was a sting. We had this plan. Now everything's gone up in smoke. And you see that she's just trying to deal with this situation in her own right. At this point, too, you're also seeing Ty catching up with Vita, and obviously the reaction is not the most positive because he's basically faked his own death, or so it's perceived.
I mean, she's mad, and I understand it, and she has every right to be.
Right. So at this point, he's, really trying to figure out, okay, what that symbol was, and he kind of teeters around to it, and at this point, he teleports into an ambulance that's moving, and it's Michaela.
Yep.
Who's tied up there and asking to be freed and saying she's drugged, and he's trying to help her, but at the same time, the driver of said ambulance whips out a shotgun.
Well, so he teleports in there, and she goes, "Oh, hey, help me! They drugged me. I don't know where I'm going. Yada yada yada." And he's like, "Oh, okay, I'll help you." And then he proceeds. She's strapped to the gurney in the back of the ambulance, and he's trying to help her out by getting her out of there by trying to unstrap the gurney. And the entire time I'm watching this, going, "You can teleport. Why don't you just take the whole thing with you and go?" And he's fussing around with it to the point where, like, the passenger in the front of the ambulance sees him and goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" And like you said, pulls a shotgun on him. I'm like, all right, well, now you got to take the whole thing with you.
Well, I think at this point, he does not know what to do with his powers.
That's true.
Because you can see with Vita, he is really trying to teeter around with where he can go with it. He's never tried teleportating with somebody else. And he's really, almost scared to the point of hurting somebody in doing such.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I understand. And with Evita, I keep saying Vita, I apologize. It's Evita. Evita is sitting there and trying to be, help him understand what's going on. And at the same time, when you're seeing Tandy's side of the story, that she's hearing these stories from Michaela about, the made-up reasons of what this is happening, and she's letting loose. And she's not biting back, and she's really just, venting her anger. I mean, there's one point in episode 2 where you see her, she's working on her ballet, and the lights are all flickering because she can't deal with her emotions about this, because it hits so close to home with what happened, the knowledge she found out about her dad the previous season. And it just ties back into it. And just like I said, Holt's portrayal is just, it's must-see TV, in my opinion. Hands down. But then we start seeing that they're jumping around a little bit. Like, this is the only part of the episode that was a little confusing to me, because you're seeing the characters jump around. Yeah. And you see O'Reilly is suddenly drinking her pain away at a bar, and she's, recounting her side of the crime scene that she saw. And you can see at this point she's thrown up outside the bar because she's obviously pounding away some shots. And she sees a reflection in the puddle of water. And it's her voice talking to her saying, "Oh, you've always been weak, and now..."
Let's say very much like a Gollum, Lord of the Rings type moment.
Yeah, it was like, the little angel on one side and the devil on the other. Like, it was one of those kind of awkward moments. And then as we see, we're presuming it's O'Reilly is going after what she's trying to track down about, the missing ambulance. Because like I said, they start jumping around a little bit, and Tandy, hears about Michaela overdosing, and then, she does like the hand touch thing when she finds her in the hospital. So she's finding out about the ambulance, and then she's going to investigate this. And we're presuming O'Reilly is doing the same thing at this point, because suddenly we see her just miraculously walking around and being, obviously after having that much alcohol, she's very, normal, upbeat, and happy.
Yeah, something right.
And just kind of giving some attitude, and you see her confronting and digging into her own information, where she confronts a family and slashes a photo. Yeah. Which was kind of like, okay, wait, what's going on here? Like, something's definitely not right. And then she gets a lead, and she runs into Dagger at where the ambulance is, and they're trying to shake down what's going on. And at this point, too, on the other side of town, you see Cloak is trying to go to Detective O'Reilly's apartment. And at this point, you can hear something is going on, and he's yelling, Bridget. And he goes in, and he finds O'Reilly tied up.
Yep.
And gagged. And O'Reilly's like, we gotta warn Tandy. She's in danger. You're all in danger. We're all in danger. She's coming.
Yeah.
And he's like, what are you talking about? So at this point, they flash back to Tandy, who is trying to stop the ambulance driver, who comes at her, and she forms a light, burst.
Yep.
Like, it almost reminded me, of Boom Boom or Meltdown from the New Mutants.
Okay, yeah.
Where she forms, this energy ball and just fires it into the ambulance and makes it flip over and explode. And at this point, O'Reilly's saying, go check to make sure nobody else is here. I'll watch the guard. And at this point, O'Reilly kills the guard after getting the information. So at this point, Tandy is running around and comes back, and Cloak is there with Detective O'Reilly, and she's going, wait, what's going on? What is this? As they come up, they find another Detective O'Reilly over the body of the driver, and she's like, well, this is interesting.
Yeah, awkward.
And that's how they ended. I thought, overall, they came back with such a strong episode 2. Like I said, episode 1 was good. Don't get me wrong. Episode 1 was good and did enough to kind of give you a little feel like where the season's going to go. And obviously dealing with very serious real-world drama, they handled it very tastefully, in my opinion, in telling their story. But they also tied in the supernatural aspect, too. And they really delved into it in episode 2. Because that's where you're hearing about the voodoo involved. And that's where you're hearing about O'Reilly now has a clone. Another personality that escaped from her in the water. I mean, we don't know yet. And obviously the story of Mayhem in the comics is a little different than they're going to do on the show. Either way, Cloak and Dagger came back and hit it out of the park, in my opinion. I'm interested to hear what everybody else has to think about it. It's must-see TV. I can't recommend it enough. It is great writing, great story, great acting, and the soundtrack did not let down from last season. Without question. But hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. What's your thoughts on Cloak and Dagger? We want to know. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
It's a heartbreak, soul-shaped radio attack. Taking 4 steps forward, no steps back.
Hey, this is Vince the Common Man Cito, a local MMA fighter, telling you to keep on listening to the ODPH, the 607's up-and-coming newest podcast.
Coming back for the final segment on this edition of the ODPH podcast. Pat, kick us off with little one-shots.
Well, I got a couple of things. First off, tying into the first segment we did, there is some Shazam news in that Henry Gayden, who wrote the script for the first Shazam movie, will return to write the sequel, this according to the Wrap. So it looks like we are going to get a sequel. You know, obviously a lot of success and a lot of fanfare and positive reviews about the movie. Very much warranted in regards to a sequel, so I'm happy to see that. Also, we have some news surrounding the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, Avengers Endgame is coming out very soon, next couple of weeks. Slight side note with Endgame, it is currently forecasted to make just at or over $900 million opening weekend worldwide, which would, if I saw the right number, shatter the previous record held by Avengers Infinity War by the tune of, say, $260 million. But there is some Phase 4 news in regards to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Kevin Feige, of course, the head honcho behind the whole Marvel universe as it appears on TV and movie screens, did an interview with io9.com where he discussed a little bit about Phase 4. He said, quote, "It's all just beginning in the 5-year plan that we've been working on. We were working on before any of that was set," that referring to the deal with 20th Century Fox. So really it's much more for us, less about specifics of when and where the X-Men will appear right now, and more just the comfort factor and how nice it is that they're home. They're all back, but it will be a very long time, close quote. So that's coming from Kevin Feige's own mouth, that they've got Phase 4 planned out for like the next 5 years. And it sounds like, at least for the next 5 years, there will be nothing X-Men related. So, I know we're beating a dead horse, but it bears repeating because people still think that they're going to be in the movie. X-Men will not be in the movie. Fantastic Four will not be in the movie. There might be a mention. There might be a little Easter egg. You see something on a building or something. But in regards to seeing somebody like Thor, Captain America, Captain Marvel, Rocket Raccoon, Loki, anybody like showing up on screen and going, "Hey, you're Professor Xavier." No, it's not going to happen. No,
they're not going to do it. I mean, obviously, the next phase is mapped out. It's Black Panther 2, Doctor Strange 2, Black Widow,
Spider-Man,
the Eternals, and Shang-Chi. That's going to be the next ones that are coming out under the Marvel banner, and Guardians of the Galaxy 3
at some point.
But obviously, with all the recent events there, we don't know when that's coming. So obviously, to try plugging in the X-Men, unless it's a cameo of some sort to those movies that are coming out,
right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
I'll say that now. That's not to say that at some point along the way where it would make sense, they won't kind of subtly maybe put a little seed in there that introduces them down the road. They might do that. But in terms of like doing an X-Men movie or having the X-Men appear in some film, at least for the next 5 years, that is not in the cards right now.
No, and it makes sense. I mean, why rush to bring them back? I know everybody's at a fever pitch to see the X-Men, but let Marvel do it the right way. I think the only thing for certain is within somewhere in the next 5 films that we just mentioned, you're going to hear the word mutant mentioned.
Yeah.
That's arguably the only thing that we could say 100% for certain.
Yeah.
And somewhere in those 5 films, if not in Guardians, if not in Spider-Man, if they do the third one there, that's going to be the only place you're going to hear a real reference.
Yeah.
It's not to say that they won't start dropping little Easter eggs as they move forward.
They could do it, but as for like characters showing up, no.
No, doesn't make sense, and I agree with them about this. You have your characters, you're already established, you got the plan in place, let it go. You can start doing some stuff on TV if you really want to push that envelope.
Yeah.
There's Disney Plus. I'm sure that they'd be more than willing to accommodate that if the right script comes along, so we'll have to wait and see. So, for my one-shots, I have 2. Very quickly, we have to mention Hellboy is coming out to theaters this week.
Yes.
David Harbour has taken over the role, and it's the long-standing Dark Horse comic, and it's going to get very, very interesting where they go from here. I mean, it's the battle of the worlds, of supernatural with humans, and it's so a unique universe that Mike Mignola has created.
Yeah.
That it's going to be interesting to see how this take is done, because obviously we know the Ron Perlman films have a very big following, as they should. They're great films.
Yeah.
So with Harbour's take on the character, it's going to be interesting how it plays out. Bry Guy Signal is actually working on a little preview on parlay points for this, so make sure to keep your eyes on that on OchoDuroParlayHour.com to get hyped up for the movie. We'll definitely be talking about that next week. And to end on a very interesting note, because I heard this morning and I was going, because I was very surprised at this news. AMC has announced that there is a third Walking Dead show in the works, slated to come out in 2020.
Okay.
Now, I am surprised at this from the aspect of everybody has been really harping about the Walking Dead's ratings have gone down. And they're still very good, but they're not the astronomical numbers they once were.
Right.
They're still doing very good numbers. I mean, obviously, I was reading about the season finale numbers were very low, and I think there's a lot of stuff going on in the realm of TV at that point. Either way, they've done their spinoff of Fear of the Walking Dead, and I know it's a very mixed reaction.
Yeah.
So to hear them try doing it third, on top of the movies that are slated to start Andrew Lincoln,
that are supposedly, according to some stuff I've read, supposed to start filming this summer.
Yeah. This is very interesting news. and I've heard some rumors about what the plot is supposed to be about. But I guess let me ask you this, Pat, in closing. 1, do you want to see a third show? And 2, what would you want to see on the show?
I'll give it a shot. I gave Fear the Walking Dead a shot. I gave Fear the Walking Dead a season, and then I kind of fell off of it in season 2 after they did the 6-week or however long it was, 1 minute, short episodes in the middle of the episodes where they were like, it was like the airplane and the whole thing, and all this is going to tie into a character showing up in the future episode, and then that character was in there for all of 30 seconds and then left. So I'm not that big on Fear the Walking Dead. I'll give it a shot just to kind of like, I don't want to go into it totally, bashing the thing and saying it's awful and saying it's crap without actually seeing it. So I'll at least give the first couple episodes a shot. And if I like it, I'll stay on with it. And if I don't, I won't. As to what I'd like to see, I've said it before, I'll say it again. We've seen, the zombies in the United States, in North America, I'll say. I'd like to see something overseas, something maybe in Europe and say, London and France would be obvious choices, but I say, let's go a little obscure. Let's go a little different. Let's go something I think would be very interesting because to my knowledge, they haven't done anything like this in any portrayal of The Walking Dead in any form. Let's do it in Venice. Make it real interesting. The floating city, the city surrounded by water. Let's see what they can do and get creative with that.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. If they're going to do the show, like I said, the reports have said that the show is going to be coming out in 2020. I definitely will give it a shot, but I guess I'm to the point where I really need a fresh take to get me excited to watch this. Because obviously I know what happens in the comics.
Right.
Fear has kind of done some different changes over the past couple seasons. And I believe they're now going to do a time jump to catch up to the current timeline.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's what I've heard.
Okay.
I can't confirm that right now, but I've read a couple different reports. And I think that's a step in the right direction because they obviously with Morgan being involved from the original Walking Dead show, and there's rumors that Dwight is getting added to it that I've heard about. It makes some sense, and I think that could really go. As far as like what they're going to do, and I'm very interested to see what the take could be because for me, I think the show, I don't want to say it's almost jumped its course because I don't think that's the right way I want to word this. But I guess where I have to think, all right, we have the movies coming out.
Yep.
We have the show that, obviously we know what's going on with Negan and company and where that's going with the Whisperers. And to see where this is going to be going, do we really need it? So, I mean, like I say, I kind of struggle with that aspect. I wouldn't mind seeing them do a take, like you said, in Venice, or if they want to try doing a series based off The Alien, which we've mentioned before, the graphic novel, the only one that's written by Brian K. Vaughan, I believe, that this was the only book that Kirkman has not touched.
Right.
So, if they want to do something, spin that off and do it overseas like that, okay, you have my attention.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really cool take, because otherwise, I guess I'm feeling zombie fatigue to a degree.
Right.
Like, how do you reinvent the wheel? How do you re-energize the franchise? I mean, this is going to be the challenge. Like I said, I'm going to watch the first episode.
Yeah.
I will give it a shot, but I really want to see something really grab my attention. Like, why should this matter at this stage?
Right.
We've had 10 years going on about The Walking Dead. We're going on season 10. We've had seasons of Fear of the Walking Dead. We now have the movies.
You've had the video games. You've had this and the books. And
if they did the video games with Lee and Clementine, I'm there.
Oh, yeah, so am I.
Okay. If they did that, okay, because those are so well done.
Yeah, just don't go near the Activision game with Daryl Dixon. That game's a hot piece of garbage.
Yeah, that one is not a fan favorite here at the panel. But if they do something really creative like that, and like I said, if they even want to try adapting the Alien storyline, the graphic novel, I'm okay with that. But I really want to see something fresh and really catch my attention. Because otherwise, I don't know if I'm be that excited to talk about it on the show. I'll always talk Walking Dead, but it's getting to the point I really need a fresh take to really capture my attention. But that's all I got for this week. So for Padawan J,
thank you.
I'm your host, Ken M. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour, #ODPH podcast. We'll see you next time.